Hi, folks. Welcome to a new unit. This unit is developmental psychology, or sometimes it's called human development. Let me pull up this slideshow. So it's how humans develop throughout the lifespan. So they develop physically, cognitively, emotionally, socially, morally. Lots of changes throughout the lifespan because we are multidimensional beings. So let's start with physical development. We're going to look at the baby in the womb, certain reflexes that babies are born with, and certain milestones they start walking and crawling and stuff like that. So the first thing is that we need to just check in on what developmental psychologists study. There are three big issues. They study a ton of stuff. There are three underlying major issues. The first is nature versus nurture. Are we who we are because of genetics or because of our experiences in life, parents affecting us, peers affecting us, our diets affecting us? So is it nature, the genetics, or nurture, the experience? Another big question is how do we develop? Do we develop in stages, like from 0 to 1, and then 1 to 3 is totally different, and then 3 to 8 is totally different, and then 8 to 20 is totally different? So is it these very distinct stages, or is it a continual gradual change? So that's a debate. Another one is stability versus change, and this is about our personality traits. Do our personality traits persist over time, or do they change over time? So those are three major issues. Okay, what about the newborns? Prenatal development, that means in the womb. How do we become who we are? We go through development in the womb in an orderly fashion. First, there's fertilization, when an egg is penetrated by a single sperm cell and they fuse to form one cell. Then you have a zygote, which is days 0 to 14. You have about 100 cells that are diversifying in their function. And then from 14 days to 9 weeks, in other words, 2 weeks to 9 weeks, you have what's called an embryo. And when an embryo, at the end of 9 weeks, it becomes a fetus. So from 9 weeks to 9 months, it's a fetus. Now, something can happen when the baby is in the womb. Stuff from the mom gets into the baby through the umbilical cord. So if mom is eating or drinking or sick, there's germs, they can get to the baby. So there's a name for things that are harmful, and that name is teratogens. And one of the most harmful is alcohol. And if the mother drinks excessively, it can lead to fetal alcohol syndrome, which is a serious developmental disability where the child can have birth and brain defects and be cognitively impaired their whole lives, depending on the severity of it. Okay, prenatal fetus is 9 weeks to 9 months, like I said. What about when the baby comes out? There are three things I'm going to tell you about that babies can do right away. However, you should know there's really like 8 or 9 reflexes that babies have, but I'm going to tell you about 3. So the first one is called the rooting reflex. Babies, the most important thing they need to do is find food, which is finding the mother's nipple. If you touch a baby on the cheek, it will turn its head and open its mouth as if it's looking for food. So that's called the rooting reflex. They're rooting around looking for food. Another one is called the grasping reflex. If you touch a baby in the hand, he will close his hand on you. That's the grasping reflex. And the final one is called the Moro reflex. When a baby is startled, it'll throw its arms out like that. Also, it feels like it's falling, it will do that. And so the grasping reflex and the Moro reflex, they think maybe developed in our evolutionary past when primates lived in trees and they had to hang on to their moms And if they fell, they needed to grab something real quick. That's just a theory. We don't know for sure if that's why, but okay. Newborns, what do they prefer? Well, right away they have these reflexes. They also have certain preferences. Right away, babies prefer their mom's voice, and right away they prefer shapes that resemble human faces, like something with an oval that has two dots on it that are like eyes. Now we know that babies prefer these things because there's a process called habituation. Habituation, if the baby's looking at the oval face with two dots and he stares at it for like 30 seconds and then looks away, and then 10 minutes later you show him something that's square and instead of two dots it has like one triangle, the baby will stare at that for like 5 seconds. So habituation is that they look, or the idea is that they're looking at it longer because they prefer it. And habituation is the idea that a baby has a decreasing responsiveness with repeated stimulation. So the second time you show him the face, he'll look at it longer. The third time, he'll look at it less and less and less. Each time he's shown the face, he'll look at it less. But habituation is one way. How long it takes a baby to habituate is one way we know if they prefer something. The longer it takes them to habituate means they like the stimulation. So they do that also with mom's smell. If you give a t-shirt that mom wore to the baby and a t-shirt that dad wore to the baby, babies prefer the mom smelling t-shirt. And that's because right away they're feeding, they're up close to the mom all the time, they get a lot of comfort from mom, and so they develop that preference. I don't know what happens if mom isn't breastfeeding, maybe it's different. Okay, similar to habituation, we have the idea of maturation. Actually, it's not really a similar idea, it's just similar sounding. Maturation, it's kind of like when we say in everyday language, like he's maturing, he was a freshman to a senior in high school and he matured. It's kind of like that, but it's a little more specific when we're talking about human development. So maturation means that various bodily and mental functions are developing in a sequence. So you learn to crawl before you learn to walk, before you lead to run. So it's a process that unfolds according to a sequence that's kind of preset. It's in our genes. Okay, so maturation sets the basic course of development while experience can adjust it. So you're learning to crawl, to walk, to run. Parents can do things to help you out a little bit, and they can maybe make things happen a week or two earlier. But basically, you're going to unfold in that pattern, and that's pretty set. So what are the timelines? First, babies roll over, then they sit up unsupported, then they crawl, finally they walk. Starting with holding the head up is about 2 to 3 months. Sitting up is 6 months. Crawling 8 to 9 months. Beginning to walk around 12. Walking independently around 15. Now remember, these are averages, so it's not a big deal if the baby is walking a month earlier or a month later. These are rough averages, but this gives you approximately when these things happen. Okay, that's the end of part 1 on human development. I hope you enjoyed it. See me if you have any questions in class.